Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept our humble obeisances. All glories to Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Gurudev, all glories to assembled Vaishnava devotees. And today, by Guru Krishna's grace, today is Monday, beginning of another new week. We have His Grace Jai Gurudev Prabhu, who will be speaking to us from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhuji needs no introduction. He's been so generous, so kind, and has been with us for quite a number of times, and has shared his love and wisdom. And today too, he's here. So Prabhuji, you're very much welcome to Hare Krishna Africa platform. So without much saying, we may put the verse on the screen and you take it over from here.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Is it possible to increase your volume a little bit, Prabhuji?
Is it better?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we are reading from the second canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, which is entitled The Cosmic Manifestation. And we are now reading from the 10th chapter of this second canto, which has a very, very interesting title, yeah, and that is the most confidential knowledge. No, I'm sorry. It's the chapter, yeah. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, which is a very, I would say, bold statement, and at the same time, an extremely important statement. So we're reading from the 10th canto, from the 10th chapter, from the second canto, 10th chapter, verse 13. So I will read the verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I will read the Sanskrit, the word by word translation of the synonyms, translation and purport. Eko nanatvam avinchan yoga kalpa samuttitaha viryam hiranmayam devo mayaya vyasrijat tridha. Synonyms. Ekaha, he, one alone. Nanatvam, varieties. Anvichan, so desiring. Yoga talpat, from the bedstead of mystic slumber. Samuttitaha, thus generated. Viryam, the semen. Hiranmayam, golden hue. Devaha, the demigod. Mayaya, by the external energy. Vyasrijat, perfectly created. Tridha, in three features. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verse 7 and 8, the creation and annihilation of the material world are stated as follows. Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau vistrijamyaham prakriti swam avastavya vistrijami punah punah bhutagramam imam kritsnam avasham prakriter vashat. At the end of each millennium, the creative forces, namely the material nature and the living entities who struggle in the material nature, all merge together into the transcendental body of the Lord. And again, when the Lord desires to manifest them, all of them are again displayed by the Lord. Therefore, the material nature is working under the control of the Lord. all of them under the agency of material nature and under the control of the Lord, or thus repeatedly created and annihilated by the will of the Lord. As such, before the creation or manifestation of the material cosmic world, the Lord exists as total energy, Mahasamashti, and thus desiring himself to be diffused to many, he expands himself further into multi-total energy, Samashti. From the multi-total energy, he further expands himself into individuals in 3 dimensions, namely Adhyatmic, Adhidhaivik, and Adhibhautik, as explained before, Vyashti. As such, the whole creation and the creative energies are non-different and different simultaneously. Because everything is an emanation from him, the Mahavishnu or Mahasamashti, nothing of the cosmic energies is different from him. But all such expanded energies have specific functions and display as designed by the Lord, and therefore they are simultaneously different from the Lord. The living entities are also similar energies, marginal potency of the Lord, and thus they are simultaneously one with and different from him. At the stage of non-manifestation, the living energies remain potent in the Lord, and when they are let loose in the cosmic manifestation, they are exhibited differently in terms of different desires under the modes of nature. Such differential manifestations of the living energies are conditional states of the living entities. The liberated living entities, however, in the Sanatan eternal manifestation, are unconditionally surrendered souls, and therefore they are not subject to the conditions of creation and annihilation. So this creation takes place by the glance of the Lord from his bedstead of mystic slumber, and thus all the universes and the Lord of the universe, Brahma, are again and again manifested. So I'll read the translation again. The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakya Chakshushrumiritam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yenam Bhutale Saramarupa Kadamayam Dadati Shaparantikam. So let me first maybe read verses 7 and 8, 8 and 9 from the Bhagavad Gita, just to read also the purport that Prabhupada gives. So here it is stated in the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prakritim swam avashtabhya visrijami punah punah bhuta gramam imam kritsnam avasham prakrite vashat. The whole cosmic order is under me. Under my will, it is automatically manifested again and again, and under my will, it is annihilated at the end. Purport. This material world is the manifestation of the inferior energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This has already been explained several times. At the creation, the material energy is let loose as the Mahatattva, into which the Lord, as his first Purusha incarnation, Mahavishnu, enters. He lies within the causal ocean and breathes out innumerable universes. And into each universe, the Lord again enters as Garbhodakasha Vishnu. Each universe is in that way created. He still further manifests himself as Kshirodakasha Vishnu, and that Vishnu enters into everything, even into the minute atom. This fact is explained here. He entered into everything. Now, as far as the living entities are concerned, they are impregnated into this material nature, and as a result of their past deeds, they take different positions. Thus, the activities of this material world begin. The activities of the different species of living beings are begun from the very moment of the creation. It is not that all is evolved. The different species of life are created immediately along with the universe. Man, animals, beasts, birds, everything is simultaneously created because whatever desires the living entities had at the last annihilation are again manifested. It is clearly indicated here by the word avasham that the living entities have nothing to do with this process. The state of being in their past life, in the past creation, is simply manifested again, and all this is done simply by his will. This is the inconceivable potency of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And after creating different species of life, he has no connection with them. The creation takes place to accommodate the inclinations of the various living entities, and so the Lord does not become involved. Now the verse number 9, Nachamam tani karmani nibadnanti dhananjaya udhastan va asinam asaktam teshu karmasu. Oh, Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am very ever detached from all these material activities, seated as though neutral. Purport. One should not think in this connection that the Supreme Personality of Godhead has no engagement. In his spiritual world, he is always engaged. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated, Atma Ramasya Tasyasti Prakritana Samarnamaha. He is always involved in his eternal blissful spiritual activities, but he has nothing to do with these material activities. Material activities are being carried on by his different potencies. The Lord is always neutral in the material activities of the created world. This neutrality is mentioned here with the word udasinavat. Although he has control over every minute detail of material activities, he is sitting as if neutral. The example can be given of a high court judge sitting on his bench. By his order, so many things are happening. Someone is being hanged, someone is being put into jail, someone is awarded a huge amount of wealth, but still, he is neutral. He has nothing to do with all that gain and loss. Similarly, the Lord is always neutral, although he has his hand in every sphere of activity. In the Vedanta Sutra 2.134, it is stated, Vaishamya Nargrini Nana. He is not situated in the dualities of this material world. He is transcendental to these dualities. Nor is he attached to the creation and annihilation of this material world. The living entities take their different forms in the various species of life according to their past deeds, and the Lord doesn't interfere with them. I will still read the verse number 7, which we've, unfortunately, I forgot to read that one first. That's chapter 9, verse 7. Sarva bhutani kaunteya prakritim yanti mamikam kalpakshaye punastani kalpadau vishrijamyaham. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. And at the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them again. Purport. The creation, maintenance, and annihilation of this material cosmic manifestation are completely dependent on the supreme will of the personality of Godhead. At the end of the millennium means at the death of Brahma. Brahma lives for 100 years, and his one day is calculated as 4,300,000 of our earthly years. His night is of the same duration. His month consists of 30 such days and nights, and his year of 12 months. After 100 such years, when Brahma dies, the devastation or annihilation takes place. This means that the energy manifested by the Supreme Lord is again wound up in himself. Then again, when there is a need to manifest the cosmic world, it is done by his will. Bahusyam. Although I am one, I shall become many. This is the Vedic aphorism from the Chandogya Upanishad, 6th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 3. He expands himself in this material energy, and the whole cosmic manifestation again takes place. So I will continue readings from the Shastra, and specifically from the Brahma Samhita, wherein it is stated. This is text number 35 in the Brahma Samhita, which describes Govinda, the Supreme Lord. He is an undifferentiated entity, and there is no distinction between potency and the possessor of. In his work of creation of millions of worlds, his potency remains inseparable. All the universes exist in him, and he is present in his fullness in every one of the atoms that are scattered throughout the universe at one and the same time. Such is the primeval Lord whom I adore. So all these verses and many others actually describe this material creation as being directly caused and implemented by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that is, in our age of science, it's extremely important that we understand the value, the objective value of the Srimad Bhagavatam for humanity at large. Humanity at large nowadays is dominated by the ideology which started in, let's say, the 17th century. In this connection, I will read a few passages from a very interesting book that I have recently found. It's a book which was written in 1935 by the great mathematician and philosopher Bertrand Russell, which is called Religion and Science. So he writes the following: religion and science are two aspects of social life, of which the former, that means religion, has been important as far back as we know anything of man's mental history, while the latter, science, after a fitful flickering existence among the Greeks and Arabs, suddenly sprang into importance in the 16th century, and has ever since increasingly molded both the ideas and the institutions among which we live. Between religion and science, there has been a prolonged conflict in which, until the last few years, science has invariably proved victorious. Now, the rise of new religions in Russia and Germany, that's 1935, that means communism and Nazism, equipped with new means of missionary activity provided by science, has again put the issue in doubt, as it was at the beginning of the scientific epoch, and has made it again important to examine the grounds and the history of the warfare waged by the traditional religion against scientific knowledge. Now here Bertrand Russell gives a definition, very short, of what science is. Science is the attempt to discover by means of observation and reasoning based upon it, first, particular facts about the world, and then laws connecting facts with one another and, in fortunate cases, making it possible to predict future occurrences. Connected with this theoretical aspect of science, there is scientific technique, which utilizes scientific knowledge to produce comforts and luxuries that were impossible, or at least much more expensive in a pre-scientific era. It is this latter aspect that gives such great importance to science, even for those who are not scientists. So we live in a scientific world, in a world where the scientific achievements, which are here referred to as that the scientific knowledge produces comforts and luxuries that were impossible, or at least much more expensive, in a pre-scientific era. So we may safely conclude that the current state of mind of most of the people is more towards science, which means, in other words, that we accept science as the new religion of mankind. It's not a recent event, as we see in this book that was written in 1935, and even previously, science since the 17th century, as has been stated above, it is written here, suddenly sprang into importance in the 16th century and has ever since increasingly molded both the ideas and the institutions amongst which we live. So we are, since the 16th century, since approximately 4 centuries, we are living in the paradigm of science. And confronted with this paradigm of science is the world of religion, or as the scientists, or even Bertrand Russell would say, the dogma, the ideologies which are based on faith and tradition. So until the event of Srila Prabhupada's rendition of the Srimad Bhagavatam, religion has been considered largely as a very primitive platform of knowledge, whereas science, specifically empirical science, starting with observation, as it was written here, that science is an attempt to discover by means of observation and reasoning based upon it, observation first, particular facts about the world, and then laws connecting facts with one another, and in fortunate cases, making it possible to predict future occurrences. Religion, considered socially, is a more complex phenomenon than science. Each of the great historical religions has 3 aspects. Number 1, a church. Number 2, a creed. And number 3, a code of personal morals. Now here the author, Bertrand Russell, is referring naturally to the situation that he knew experiencing in 1935, meaning before the event in the English language and later on in any other language of the knowledge contained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Which means that he couldn't differentiate between religion and science, which is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Therefore, he said historical religions have 3 aspects: church, creed, and a code of personal morals, ethics. That's about all. He never could understand in those days that there is a purely scientific knowledge described in the Srimad Bhagavatam of the creation and of the cause of the creation. Now, if we refer to science, science has taught people since many generations, and is still teaching people at school from the very start, the fact that the material creation has chemical event which was described by scientists as the Big Bang, right? A completely impersonal chance event which happened many, many, many millions of years ago by the assembly of various chemicals. Now I will maybe refer to another article I have here, and that is the creation of the world according to science. So here it is stated in this, since we wish to know whether the universe has a beginning, and if so, how the universe began, it would help us to construct a picture of the early universe. What was it like at the earliest possible times? We do this by looking at the universe today. We know a lot about the laws of nature today, and we have many indications that they have not changed in the course of the universe's lifetime. So we can use them to try and construct a picture. And I insist on the word, we can try to construct, which means we can speculate, of the early universe. We can look at the universe today, its content and its size and its development, and try to extrapolate backwards. Another complementary way of learning about the state of the universe at early times relies on Einstein's theory of special relativity. This theory states that light from far away had to travel the light had to travel a long time. So the light we observe today from distant sources was emitted when the universe was much younger and provides information about a time long ago. When we look at the world today, what do we find? We begin with what we can see. It turns out that we can't see much. That's a very nice statement. Very little of the universe is actually visible matter. In fact, only about 5%. This is made up of stars and gas, mostly hydrogen, all bound together by gravity into galaxies. The galaxies, too, are bound together, organized into clusters. And here there's references. Stars are spherical bodies made up mostly of hydrogen. A star emits light because it has a natural nuclear reactor inside, burning on a low flame. There are about 100 billion stars in a galaxy and 100 billion galaxies in the visible universe. That is altogether 10 to 22, which means 22 zeros. The galaxies turn round and round at the breathtaking speed of one complete rotation every 100 million years. So these are just a few mentions of how science nowadays sees the creation of the universe, all ignoring completely the knowledge which is contained in the Bhagavad. It is not for any, I would say, fortuite or chance reason that the Srimad Bhagavatam is such a revolutionary scripture in the modern world, and that Srila Prabhupada has very kindly brought the Srimad Bhagavatam in a wonderful English rendition with absolutely fantastic purports, which are not his only, I would say, commentaries, but there are synthesis of the commentaries of all the previous acharyas. So, in other words, the modern conception of the creation is completely and totally impersonal, which means that everything has started by chemistry, and then further the chemistry has developed until the first chemical reaction gave rise to the first life, the manifestation of life, some amoebas in the primordial soup, which means life, in other words, life comes from matter. The creation is, as we have read just before, is a question of chemicals, of gases. Srila Prabhupada, several times in his conversations with devotees in his morning walks, was discussing these scientific theories. And certainly Prabhupada hadn't it very easy with his disciples. Do not forget that most of his disciples in those days, the early days of the movement, they weren't dropouts. They weren't, I would say, people who had no knowledge. Rather, they were young Americans who studied at the university, who were college graduates, many of them, and who have imbibed the scientific theories and who were, at the very least, absolutely unwilling to let Srila Prabhupada tell them what is true or not. They were some of them were extremely skeptical, and they were challenging Srila Prabhupada. And they were explaining to him this, what we have just read, that everything started with the Big Bang and then evolved slowly but surely into life. And life is a product of matter. Yeah? And Srila Prabhupada challenged these devotees, asking them, so, okay, so you say that everything started with the explosion of some gases in the Big Bang, but then he challenged them, where does the gas come from, right? Where do the chemicals come from? Recently, I have discussed with a friend of ours who is a lawyer, who very much appreciates Srila Prabhupada's books, and who is at the same time, he studied law, but also before that he studied physics, theoretical physics. And he explained to me that yes, the scientists, they can start to explain the start of the universe, according to him at least, just at the moment of the Big Bang, and a few seconds after that, they already can speculate or extrapolate, as they say, to explain the causes of the galaxies, the causes of the various planets, the development of the universe, the sun, etc. But what is before the Big Bang, that they cannot know, that they cannot explain, he told me. So I said exactly what Prabhupada said. So where did the gas come from? Where did the gas come from? And he said, oh, we do not know. And then I challenged him the same way Srila Prabhupada said. So if you do not know, why do you teach? If you do not know, how can you teach? You know? And this friend of ours, he said, well, I admit that I don't know. So why do you teach? If you say, I do not know, that's very clearly expressed cheating. You cannot teach in schools and in high schools, at the university, this theory of the Big Bang, when you cannot explain the cause of the Big Bang and the gases which have created so-called the Big Bang. So, in other words, we are currently living in the scientific age, which, as Bertrand Russell, of course, clearly says, that here he states that, that connected with this theoretical aspect of science, there is a scientific technique which utilizes scientific knowledge to produce, and here it's very important for us, looking at our Zoom conference and listening online, being online, I don't know, in Africa, and driving with trucks. I think one of our friends is a truck driver, and he has a camera right underneath his steering wheel, and he can be online at the same time. Yeah. So this scientific knowledge produces comforts and luxuries that were, and that is a fact, impossible, or at least more expensive. Well, I would say mainly impossible in a pre-scientific era. If I remember well, the only person who had the capacity to be online live in those days, maybe not the only one, but the one we know about, was Sanjaya. When Dhritarashtra asked him, Sanjaya, tell me, how are my sons and the sons of Pandu waging on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? And Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport also that Sanjaya had the capacity to see in his heart some kind of like a television, what was going on at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a very mystical feat in those days. Practically, it was impossible. Today, even the lowest of the Shudras, which means me and you and I and everybody, we are endowed with the capacity of seeing things live, thousands and thousands of kilometers away from us, and even participating in conversations like we, for example, participating now, due to the scientific era, yeah, scientific knowledge, which, as it's stated here, Connected with this theoretical aspect of science, there is scientific technique. Yeah, so we are in a technical world which allows us to see on distance, to communicate on distance at the speed of light, 300,000 kilometers per second. At the same time, we can do things which were absolutely unthought of in the times before the scientific world started to take over. The science, flying with airplanes, communicating with each other on distance, flying airplanes, just flying. The old thing, you know. We read in the scriptures, in the Vedas, that there is things which we call the vimana, or the flying machines, right? But those were in the very ancient times, right? In the Kali Yuga, there's no question of vimanas, which would be worthwhile. But we have vimanas, airships, where you can fit up to 500 passengers and fly from, let's say, Africa to Europe within several hours. Not a big thing. So yes, we have produced comforts and luxuries that were impossible, or at least much more expensive in pre-scientific era. It is the later aspect, this is the aspect that gives such great importance to science, even for those who are not scientists, like I or you or everyone, right? But unfortunately, all these, it's written here, comforts and luxuries, they are misleading us as far as understanding who we are and the real cause of creation. And that is this second canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, yeah, this which is called the Cosmic Manifestation. And specifically this chapter, I would say it's an amazing chapter. Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions, right? So I will just, for your references, I would just, if you allow me, read from the first verse, just the verses, just to see how it's important what the Srimad Bhagavatam is. Sri Shukadev Goswami said, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 divisions of statements regarding the following. First, the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of manus, the science of God. This is a science that the Christian, let's say the monotheistic religions, they have absolutely no science of God. This is contained in the Bhagavatam. And then returning home back to Godhead, this is something wonderful, liberation and the summum bonum. And the text number 2, I just read the text. That's the 10th chapter. To isolate the transcendence of the summum bonum, the symptoms of the rest are described sometimes by Vedic inference, sometimes by direct explanation, and sometimes by summary explanations given by the great sages. The elementary creation of 16 items of matter, now we go into the science of the creation, namely the 5 elements, fire, water, land, air, and sky, sound, form, taste, smell, touch, and the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and mind, is known as sarga, whereas subsequent resultant interaction of the modes of material nature is called visarga. The right situation for the living entity is to obey the laws of the Lord and thus be in perfect peace of mind under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The manus and their laws are meant to give right direction in life. The impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work, which means we're all here in this material world because we want something. We're not here by chance. Yeah, this is the whole difference between the Vedic philosophy, as explained and expanded upon by the Acharyas, and the so-called scientific rational philosophy. That the impetus for activity is the desire for fruitive work. In other words, we want something. We are not here by chance. We want something. In our language in this country, we say that even the chicken doesn't scratch the land for just because she wants to scratch, because she wants something. The chicken wants something. She wants to find some grain, something to eat. Yeah, we all want something. Yeah, And we are in this want, we are chasing after so many material activities and material desires. So the science of God describes, once again, science of God, describes the incarnations of the personality of God and his different activities, together with the activities of his great devotees. The merging of the living entity, along with his conditional living tendency, with the mystic lying down of the Mahavishnu, is called the winding up of the cosmic manifestation. Liberation is the permanent situation of the form of the living entity after he gives up the changeable, it's a very important word, the changeable gross and subtle material bodies. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being, or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. So here we see the difference between the science of God, or the science which is expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam in various cantos. Now we are in one of the most scientific parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So the difference between the science of God, the science which is expounded in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and our modern science, or the science which sprung up mainly, as Bertrand Russell says, in the 17th century with the experiments made by Copernicus and Kepler and Galileo Galilei and Isaac Newton and many, many other scientists who came later in the 18th, 19th century and 20th century, of course. The great difference is that at the start of the creation in the modern scientific, there's nothing. There's absolutely nothing. When you ask the scientists, where does the gas come from which caused the Big Bang? They cannot answer. They said, we do not know, right? Whereas the science which is expounded in the Bhagavatam clearly indicates where this all comes from. The Supreme One, who is celebrated as the Supreme Being or the Supreme Soul, is the supreme source of the cosmic manifestation, as well as its reservoir and winding up. Thus, he is the supreme fountainhead, the absolute truth. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adhidhaivik. And the embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adhibhautic person. All three of the above mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, who sees every one of them as the shelter of the shelter, is independent of all, and therefore he is the supreme shelter. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water Garbhodaka. That supreme person is not impersonal, and therefore is distinctively a Nara, or person. Therefore, the transcendental water created from the supreme Nara is known as Nara. And because he lies down on that water, that's the explanation, he is known as Narayan. So here we have a very nice definition of the name of Narayan. One should definitely know that all material ingredients, activities, time, and modes, and the living entities who are meant to enjoy them all exist by his mercy only. And as soon as he does not care for them, everything becomes non-existing. And now we have today's verse. The Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. So I won't go further because further will be some other devotee who will do the reading. That's text number 14 and the subsequent. Anyhow, this 10th chapter of the second canto is extremely important to read in a very, I would say, concentrated way. And I would even suggest that those who want to understand better the science of God should read this chapter 10, which is a very scientific chapter in the Srimad Bhagavatam, repeatedly, including the purports by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, so that we can understand more thoroughly the scientific aspect of the Srimad Bhagavatam and mainly the impact which this translation of Srila Prabhupada has on the modern world. Now, let's say most of the people nowadays, as I've stated at the very start, are under the influence of modern science, because modern science, so-called, created so many comforts and luxuries for the man of today, and is promising him more and more of these things in the future. Of course, many people are becoming, throughout the world, very skeptical about the future. Prabhupada once said, trust no future, however pleasant present it may be. And he was right. And many people nowadays are starting to doubt about the nice future, mainly when you consider how we have created an industry through scientific advancement, where we have within 150 years, 200 years maybe, I would say less, 150 years, we have managed to burn resources under the earth in the form of petrol and gas and coal, which were kept underneath the soil for many millions and millions of years, fossil fuels. And we have managed to burn an amount of practically all the fossil fuels within 150 years. And those fossil fuels were kept underneath the earth for millions and millions and millions of years. Now, just understand, anyone who has a little bit of understanding what is mathematics and what is chemistry, what does it mean to burn within 150 years resources which were kept in the earth for millions of years? The time separation of the time level is absolutely flabbergasting. It's like within a second we have burned on this planet so much of these fossil fuels, and then therefore we are witnessing now a very, very fast change of the climate. Climate change is nothing new. Climate change happens according to Krishna's arrangement, according to the periodicity, mainly in this Kali Yuga. Time always creates changes. There have been climate changes since ever, mainly in the Kali Yuga. Kali Yuga is an age where climate change is always going on. And these climate changes have taken, some of them have taken 1,000, some of them 500, some of them 10,000 years, the last ice age, etc., or the small ice age, which was in the 16th century, before we started burning fossil fuels. So there was also climate change, which lasted 200-300 years, which was a very bad time for specifically for European agriculture. But now we are witnessing a climate change which goes on within 10 years, within 20 years. It's nothing from the historical point of view. And everybody is shocked. I know you in Africa, you are now suffering from such heat waves. You have 45, 50 degrees now in April, in start of May, And this is just the start. This is just the tip of the iceberg, which is going to go on for the next, I don't know, generations. We have created our scientific so-called comforts and luxury and blah, blah, blah. We have created a situation for ourselves and also for nature, which is absolutely amazing, Just an example, my father was a scientist. He was quite a top guy at the World Meteorological Organization. He was a hydrologist and meteorologist. He has passed away already 13 years ago. But I remember in the late 90s, when the fear of a global warming or a very, I would say, fast climate change was already pending, I asked my dad, I asked him, can you tell me, is this climate change real or not? He said, no, it's not real. He denied. He flatly denied. And I said, okay, on what basis? He said, well, there was always climate change. The history is full of climate change. This is also, so we shouldn't be so much worried about it. And I said, yeah, but we have burned so much fossil fuels and we have created a situation in our atmosphere which is quite I would say, unique in the sense of the time scale, because we really, with a very short time scale, we have burned so much fossil fuels. He said, no, no, this won't happen. This is no problem. The seas will absorb all the CO2, etc., etc. And then I told my father, but can you tell me, look, if it's real, if the climate change is really caused by mankind's burning of, is it possible? I mean, what will happen? And my father, professor, scientist, PhD, whatever, he said, then we're screwed up, we're fucked. You know, that's what he told me, my father, who was a scientist. So this idea is being more and more shared by people of today. And we are starting to understand surely but surely that the way that our science has created a civilization is quite dangerous, to say the least, and will cause a lot of catastrophes in the future for the future generations. It doesn't look very, very, I would say, optimistic. Yeah. So to make the story short, we are introducing the Srimad Bhagavatam into the society. Now, just a few people have understood the value of the Bhagavatam. In Africa, I don't know, you have several hundred devotees. But what is the comparison between several hundred devotees with the millions of people who live in Africa? The same goes for Europe, the same goes for Russia, the same goes for India, the same goes for everywhere. But we have introduced a little bit of this science, which may in the future, help mankind to adapt, to become resilient, and mainly to change the views towards science, which is materialistic, which explains that everything came from nothing, that life has started from chemicals, there is no God behind this creation, and really on a scientific basis try to introduce this knowledge of the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and specifically the Bhagavatam into the different societies on this planet. And it will help us. It will definitely help us, because these scientific views, atheistic views, have created a terrible chaos. When I taught at the university, I was 15 years. I taught the history of economic theories, like, you know, starting from people like Adam Smith and Ricardo and you name it, and all the 19th century economists like Marx, etc. So I told the students that you have to understand that all these economic theories, which have created this wonderful capitalistic society, as you like it, if you like it, they were created by atheists, people who did not believe in God, you know. So if you have something which is created by people, an economic theory which is devised and, I would say, invented, maybe that's the better word, it was invented by people who discarded God from their theories. They just threw God over the board. There's no God. You know, Marx even said that religion is the opium for the people. And Laplace, who was a scientist in the 18th century, he wrote a very, no, excuse me, he was already in the 19th century. Laplace wrote a book about the creation, which he purely based on what I've just read, the chemicals, etc., etc. And Napoleon Bonaparte asked him, well, you know, here you are justifying the creator, you know, you have to take into account. And Laplace, who was sort of the inventor of this ideology of the creation coming from nothing, he said, oh, I don't need any God in my theories. It's a hypothesis which is not necessary for my developing my theories, right? So basically all these scientific achievements which have created naturally so much luxury, so much technological advancement, and so much, I would say, easy living for most of us. Every one of us, we have a mobile phone, and now the smartphones are incredible. I must say, in one sense, I'm happy that I have a smartphone, because in my smartphone, I have all of Srila Prabhupada's books in this little box, and all of Srila Prabhupada's lectures and conversations in this app. I have two apps here which contain all this. It's fantastic. You know, I don't need to carry out bags with books. when I'm in the tram or in the train, I just open my mobile phone and I can read Prabhupada's books. Others follow, YouTube and all kind of social media. I read Prabhupada's books and listen to Prabhupada's lectures when I'm in the tram or in the train. So let's say there's many advantages. We could always use everything in Krishna's service, but we have to understand that we're living in a very dangerous time, and the Srimad Bhagavatam is a panacea. It's a real panacea, and we have to introduce it more and more into society. We have to understand it, read it more, understand it more, becoming more and more, I would say, convinced, that's the word, enthusiastic, convinced that the value of this Shastra, the Srimad Bhagavatam, is enormous for the modern world and for the future generations. So thank you very much. That would be all from my part. And if anyone has any questions, you're welcome. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful delivery of the text. The text itself is quite scientific and it's very interesting. We had a personality like your humble self delving into the subject matter from scientific, yet at the same time Vedic approaches. So, dear devotees, if anyone may have questions, comments, realizations you would want to ask or share, please, you may indicate by using the hand emoji or your physical hand, and you'll be asked to unmute to ask your question or to speak. Prabhuji, I have one quick question. I think it is from the text itself.
Yes.
And if I may put it up here, the text says that the Lord, while lying on his bed of mystic slumber, generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. So that tells me that in order to create, also to recreate living entities, semen is required. Of course, we've heard from Srila Prabhupada, speaking from the scriptures, different types of reproduction or procreation, where some are from eggs, some are from perspiration, some are from semen, and some from other two or so other things. I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering how Krishna is said to have generated this seminal symbol, which is golden in hue. When we look at the chemistry of semen, the color is not golden in hue. It is like whitish gray, and if it turns golden hue, it means there is a problem. So, if you may attempt to explain to me what Lord Brahma is trying to tell us from this statement, that the Lord generated the seminal symbol, which is golden in hue.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's not easy question, but in the translation, Srila Prabhupada purposefully uses the adjective, not the word which he adds in his translation, generally the seminal symbol. Yeah, he doesn't. Prabhupada in the translation doesn't write the Lord while lying in his bed of mystic slumber generated a semina golden in hue through external energy, but he writes purposefully seminal symbol. Yeah, so when we speak of symbol, that means that it is not in any way to be understood from our experience in this material world, as you have stated. that the semina is a material, I would say, ejaculation, which is created in the testicles of a man or a dog or a cat or a lion, and it has the potency of containing so many spermia. Yeah, the sperms are moving around, and within this liquid of the sperm, it is injected into the womb, specifically of a female, and there it reaches through the uterus all the way to the egg, and it makes the egg fertile if the egg is available. And then the egg develops, as you have said, that there's definitely from eggs and there's from perspiration, right? So specifically in this case, we're speaking about our understanding of what semen, viryam in this verse, means for us. But Srila Prabhupada very clearly says he generated the seminal symbol, golden in hue, through external energy, out of his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. He didn't impregnate a woman or an egg by this, but by his symbol through external energy out of his desire, once again, his desire to manifest varieties of living entities from himself alone. It wasn't in any way, plus that there's statements which are clearly also describing that the Lord impregnates the material nature with living entities just by glancing at them. That's another version which is explained in the Bhagavatam, that just by glancing the living entities, the Lord impregnates just by glancing. You know, we have to. Prabhupada used to say, we have to, if you want to impregnate our wife, we have to use a specific part of our body. But the Lord, He can impregnate just by glancing at the material nature. So, but in this verse, He generated the seminal symbol. It was a symbol, golden in hue, and that is what we have to understand, that we are not dealing with I would say, physical body in our understanding, but with a transcendental body. We can see he was lying on his bed of mystic slumber, yoga nidra. So these are actually aspects of the transcendental nature of the Lord, and in this connection we have to understand them. In this, this is our understanding, that we are dealing with transcendence. We are not dealing with matter or material personality. Like, that's what I mean. So the word viryam, if we go into the Sanskrit dictionary, we will see also that viryam doesn't mean only semen, but viryam means also the force, the energy, the energetic, the energetic power of a specific source. And here the energetic power is in golden hue, hiranmayam, which is a very beautiful simile. Okay?
All right. Thank you, Prabhuji, for the answer to my question. One thing I'm also quite confused about is when we're trying to address the energies of the Lord, we often talk different Shaktis, which is energies of the Lord, and or we talk about different elements. Now, my question is, like, for example, we have this Earth planet, and we know that there is a predominating deity of this Earth planet, Mother Bhumi.
Right.
Now, and let's say Ganga, the Ganges River. Now, the question I have, I'm confused or perplexed about is, does Mother Bhumi manifest herself as the Earth planet, or Mother Bhumi is just representing in this particular dispensation?
There's some problem on the line.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you, but it was cut off for a moment. The
Okay,
connection
so
was a little difficult.
I'll try to repeat myself. I'm saying that my doubt is, does Mother Bhumi become the Earth planet? Does Mother Ganga become the Ganges River? Or the Ganges River is there and Mother Ganga becomes the predominating deity of the Ganges? The earth is there and Mother Bhumi becomes the predominating deity. Anger is there, and a particular personality becomes the controller of anger, or that personality manifests himself into various beings, and those beings get angry. So, does element which is impersonal gets controlled by a person, or a person manifests himself or herself in an impersonal form in various beings?
That's a very, I would say, philosophical question, naturally, but I would answer it in this with a different similar analogy. I assume many of you have a bank account, right? And the bank account is completely impersonal. You have on this bank account, you have money and you can move it around and everything. But you are managing, you, a person, are managing your bank account. It's not that the bank account is you. You do not enter into the bank account. You do not make it personal by entering into your bank account. You are controlling the bank account as a person, but the bank account can do wonderful things on your behalf. You can transfer money to your parents, to your family. You can transfer money from your bank account to the car dealer where you will buy a new car. You can do so many things with your bank account, but the bank account itself is impersonal. It's an energy expanded by you where you deposit your money, but you, the person, are the one who is controlling this. Similarly, all of these personalities we have spoke about, Bhumi and the one who is in charge of Rudra, of anger, right? And the Ganges River, etc., etc. All these are personalities. They're described in the 87th chapter of the 12th of the 10th canto, in the verses by the personified Vedas. Yeah, all the Vedic knowledge, for example, is we can find it in so many shastras, but the Vedas personified. They're beyond this material world. They are situated near the Supreme Lord Mahavishnu. Yeah. So similarly, all these personalities like Bhumi and Rudra for anger and Ganges for the river of Ganges, they are personalities who are managing the manifestations, the energies which are apparent to us, and we can see them. We can see this planet Earth working. We can see the river Ganges coming through the layers of the material world into this material universe by the mercy and by the lotus foot or toe of Vamandev, as we read it in the fourth canto. So all these manifestations of energies of Krishna, or the energies which are controlled by Krishna's specific empowered personalities, they are always, the person is behind the energies, not that the energy is the person or the energy creates the person. Yeah. So the example of the bank account is the analogy of the bank account is very clear to everyone, that you are the bank, the money which you have in your bank account is the power that you have. You have the power, but the power itself is impersonal, and you are controlling that power. You are controlling that power. You can transfer money from one account to another, etc. You can purchase things through your bank card at the shop, etc. These things are working through your power. Even let's say now we're living in the life of electricity, of course. Yeah, all these bank accounts and online banking or bank cards, they work with electricity and magnetism, and you the person, or the one who's moving these energies, this electricity and magnetism. These things are working on your behalf, although they are completely impersonal. So similarly, we can say that all the planets and all the rivers and all the universes, they're all extremely variegatedness, and they seem to be moving at an impersonal, without any control. But there is control, and we should understand it from the Shastras, how this control is taking place. But it's always a person who is behind these elements and behind the different Shaktis.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji, for the answer. I mean, I quite understand that material language and material experiences oftentimes fall short in trying to understand the scientific spiritual world. But the beautiful analogy you gave as regards to money in the bank, which makes a lot of sense. But the other question in that regard is that, yeah, with the money in the bank, I can control the money the way I want it. But personally, I worked and earned the money and deposited the money in the bank. If I did not deposit the money in the bank, I could not become the controller. But we know that these living entities, they did not create whatever they are controlling. But I cannot understand the explanation you're giving. I think we'll go to Madhavan Prabhu. Please, you may unmute. Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for the very wonderful class you've given us, especially how you compare the material science with the spiritual knowledge. From the way you analyze it and the way things going, comparing knowledge of the Srimad Bhagavatam with present-day scientific knowledge, it's just like comparing truth, what is true, with mental speculation. Then also, what we see as advancement now in this age of Kali is just because the human being, we have degenerated, because even when we see the capacity or capability of the human being during the previous age, maybe the upper age, that is 5,000 years backward, we can see that human beings can do very wonderful things. Just like the example of JAYA, which you gave. So, because this is in the time 5,000 years back, when you mentioned that you have all the lectures, all the books of Prabhupada, just in a small phone. But in those days, people live longer years. People can live 10,000 years, and even more than that. So their memory was good. So they don't need any phone to keep any information. Whatever they hear it by oral reception, they remember it. So the question of phone doesn't come. Then the technology in those days also, they don't use fossil fuels. Maybe they use solar energy, because when you look at their spaceship or their aircraft, they don't give any emission, no pollution, and it's noiseless, and it's very fast. So because of the degradation of this age, that's why we are compelled to produce these are so-called mundane scientific things. And also, when we look at Sri Upanishad, the 11th mantra, we stated that only one who can learn the process of nations and that of transcendental knowledge side by side, can transcend the influence of death, birth, and death. So I think that statement is emphasizing that one should not just have material science knowledge alone. The transcendental knowledge also, one should learn it by side by side. That is when one is completely knowledgeable. Otherwise, one is bewildered by the so-called science and scientific discovery. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Madhavan Prabhu, for the contribution. Prabhuji, Gurudev Prabhu, do you have something to share about what Madhavan Prabhu just shared with us?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of our main focuses now, is to introduce the Srimad Bhagavatam and the knowledge of the Vedas as presented by Srila Prabhupada to us in the literary form, in books, to the scientific community, so that they can do both, as was stated in the verse from the Sri Ishopanishad, that one should consider both sides of knowledge. It's not easy, because people are literally usually considering, just like there was some time ago, I went to an office of a lawyer here in Prague, in the Czech Republic, and I told him if he would like to buy a Bhagavad Gita. And he flatly refused, because he referred to all literatures which are dealing with the knowledge of God or with God in general, that they're simply something which is based on beliefs. And he's not concerned with beliefs. He only deals with facts. The same things happened to Srila Prabhupada when he was in Moscow in 1971 in summer, in June, with Shamsundar, and he spoke with Professor Kotovsky of the, in those days, Soviet Academy of Science of the Indology Department. And the professor, when Prabhupada stated all these aspects of Vedic philosophy and culture, which are including these knowledge of God, science of God, as is described here in these verses. And the Professor Kotovsky said, yeah, but these are just things which are in books. We cannot refer to this knowledge as facts. We need facts, we need proofs, we need empirical, measurable truths. What's stated in the books, we're not accepting what's stated in the books. Yeah. So nowadays we will be always confronted with people who have been basically taught from their very childhood, spoon-fed, that's the word, spoon-fed with scientific knowledge, with facts and figures and measurements and weights, etc., that they approach the philosophy of the Bhagavatam as something which is in the books, which you cannot, I would say, measure, right? So we will have to be tolerant, patient, to introduce this knowledge to the people, well understanding that it won't be easy for the people to understand this language. But I must say also to our that there are people who told me, I've met one guy who was really nice, and he told me, look, I've read the Bhagavad Gita before from various editions, but only when I got Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita could I understand the meaning of the Bhagavad Gita. Because Srila Prabhupada's translations on the one hand, and mainly Srila Prabhupada's purports, are clearly understandable by people. And he was very, very positive in that case. And he was already by himself interested in spiritual and transcendental matters. But once he got Srila Prabhupada's book, it was very simple, clear. He understood what the meaning was. So therefore, we have to be patient, mainly titikshava, tolerant, yeah, patient, titikshava, karunika, we should be very merciful. Suhridam sarvadehinam, we should be friendly to all living, and suhridam sarvadehinam. Ajata shatru, we should be people who have no enemies. Ajata shatru. Ajata shatru means that you have no enemies. When we meet some people on the street or in the offices, and try to introduce our books to them, sometimes we get refused, sometimes we get treated like, oh, this is simply some kind of belief, get out, and we're not interested, etc. So we have to be very tolerant. Shanta, we should be very peaceful. That's the nature or the characteristic of the sadhus. So our movement is creating sadhus, yeah. And these sadhus have various activities. Some of them are preachers, some of them are workers in factories, some are entrepreneurs, etc., etc. And we meet various people or relatives, or etc. And we should always be very careful and tactful of introducing this knowledge, but we should be determined because it will help people. Definitely it does. Just for your information, one of our book distributors in America, you may be already aware of that, he distributed 5,000 books in one day. 5,000 books, about 300 Bhagavatam sets in one day, Mahotsaha Prabhu. And I saw an interview with him and I understood that this devotee is totally empowered by Krishna. So yeah, we should make an effort, each a small effort. Not everyone can be Mahotsaha. We are just small, yeah, like the spider and Hanuman. But we should be patient, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
yeah, thank you. Well, this Mahotsava undoubtedly is specially empowered.
Oh yeah.
He's an amazing devotee, and he's been doing it for years. So,
Just for
thank
your
you.
information concerning Mahotsav Prabhu, many people don't understand his approach and his methods because it's physically impossible to sell 5,000 books in one day, even if you calculate, how much he would have to do himself. So the fact of the matter is that he's not alone. He has a whole team. That's number one. Number two, he has an extremely powerful personality. He's empowered by the acharyas, not only by Srila Prabhupada. Number two, so he has an extremely powerful presentation. He can really change the minds of people. That's number two. Number three, he chooses the venues where he sells books very carefully. He doesn't go like haphazardly everywhere. He chooses, for example, like lately in this last record-breaking distribution, he chose a big symposium of yoga teachers in America. He booked a stand there and paid a fee for having a stand right in the middle of this big yoga convention, right? And he planned the whole thing very carefully from the very start. I don't know. I guess in Africa you also have these markets where you have a person who sells, for example, appliances for the kitchen. Yeah, so he has a big table and he has all these appliances on the table, and he has a fascinating, I would say, mesmerizing method of approaching people. So let's say you have Mahotsaha standing in front of a book table at this yoga convention, and he speaks in a way which is so fascinating for the people, and he offers them such a wonderful presentation. And now you have about 50 people standing around the table, right? 50 people. And he said, look, this set costs normally $4,999, and I'm going to give you this set for $300. Yeah. And then he has a devotee dressed as a karmi who comes to the table and says, okay, so I'll buy one, right? And then you have 50 people around the table who say, wow, for $300, why not? And then he can sell 20, 30 sets in 15 minutes, you know what I mean? In this methodology. And he's so expert at it. He's really a super duper professional, empowered by Srila Prabhupada, empowered by the acharyas, that he can do this extraordinary feats. And he doesn't do it every day, From time to time, it takes a whole preparation. He has a van, and behind the van, he has a huge trailer where he has all these 400, 500, 600 Bhagavatam sets, which he buys in India for a price which is much cheaper than in the US. That's why in the World Sankirtan newsletter, you will never see his name mentioned in America, because he doesn't work with the American BBT. He has his suppliers from the Indian BBT. So therefore he can challenge them. And it happens so in miracles. I call it Krishna magic, you know. That, for example, I had also similar experience not too long ago. I went to one big company, and I wanted to sell a Bhagavad Gita to the owner of the company. So I approached the secretary and I asked her, because I do door to door, and asked her if I can speak to the owner. And the secretary at the reception desk, she said, "Oh, I'll phone his assistant. Maybe she will come down." And lo and behold, within 10 minutes, not the assistant, but he himself, the owner, came down. And he was very open-minded, interested in India and Indian philosophy and culture, an extremely wealthy personality, you know. And I said, well, you know, you can give a donation for I just sell Bhagavad Gitas and some audiobooks for my publishing house. And he said, so what do you want a donation? I said, yeah, sure, people give a donation. So let's say Bhagavad Gita, usually people give a donation of 300, 500, whatever, this money here we have. The man gave 3,000. So the same thing goes with Mahotsaha, you know. He told me that sometimes there are some guys who are so positive and so wealthy, say, okay, I'll give you those $5,000 for the whole set. And he uses the profit to lower the prices with other people. So he's very, very, very intelligent. And he's Ekeha Kururandana. He has only one purpose, and that is to satisfy his Guru Maharaj and satisfy Srila Prabhupada and all the acharyas. And he's super empowered. Krishna Shakti, he has really, and he has a skilled salesman approach. Very skilled, very fine, refined, and Shakti. That's just a parenthesis towards Mahotsaha's glorious book distribution records.
Yeah. He's actually worth glorified. So thank you. We go to His Grace Shima Acharya Prabhu, please. You may unmute.
Jaya Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the wonderful discussion. Am I audible?
Very clear, yes.
Okay. Yeah, so my question, I want the clarification on some of the terms we use often in our preaching, especially in the books. Two questions. First one will help me to know how to ask the second one. First one, can something be transcendental and at the same time be Maya? Can something be transcendental and at the same time has to be contaminating? That's my first question. Then your answer will help me to know whether the second is necessary.
Well, it's just the same thing is, can a knife be useful, or can it cut your bread, or can it cut your throat? Of course, you know, you can use the Maya for inducing people to buy Prabhupada's books, and you can use Maya for your own sense gratification. It's up to you. Maya is Krishna's energy. It's also originally transcendental. There's nothing else but transcendence. But the way you use transcendental energies makes them into Maya or in Krishna Shakti. There's nothing but spirit. There's nothing but spirit. It's only the way you use spirit that it's either Maya or it is Krishna.
All right. So Srila Prabhupada in his purport to some verses in the Gita mentioned that there are two types of transcendentalists, two or three types, two types of transcendentalists, the devotees and the
impersonalists.
And the impersonalists. Thank you. And
the impersonalists.
Yes. Yes. So this is what is giving me a little confusion, because when we read Chaitanya Charitamrita and you hear how much Lord Chaitanya, condemn the impersonalists, and then many a time it is said that the impersonalists are like, they're also like atheists. We should not associate with them. But then again, our scriptures and the Acharya also say that they are transcendentalists. So this is the question. The people ask the question: how can you consider them transcendentalists and at the same time you say avoid their association? Can something transcendental be contaminating? That is the question.
Well, I think you're confusing two words, the impersonalist and the Mayavadi. That's a very big difference. It's a gulf of difference, of course. A Mayavadi is not a transcendentalist. He's an offender, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that they're the total offenders, and we should avoid them. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, avoid the Mayavadis like poison. They're not transcendentalists. Mayavadis are not transcendentalists. But impersonalists, just like you have the four Kumaras, they were impersonalists before they met, before they had the darshan of Lord Vishnu, when they had this lila with the guardians, Jaya and Vijay, when Vishnu came and they smelled this wonderful aroma of the tulsi leaves, they immediately became personalists. Nevertheless, many were and are still impersonalists, and Krishna speaks about the impersonalists in the Bhagavad Gita in a very, I would say, in a very clear way. He doesn't never condemn impersonal. He just said that it's very kleshada, which is very difficult and complicated to achieve transcendental realization and liberation from the material illusion through the impersonal ways, or to realize the Supreme Lord through the impersonal way. But Mayavadis, that's completely different. Those are persons who are actually demons, who are envious of Krishna, and they have no access to transcendental knowledge, or to speak of liberation.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for giving this light. But can you just tell me what is the Sanskrit word for impersonalist?
Brahmavadi.
Mm.
Brahmavadi, that's who is following the realization of Brahman. Tattvamasi, which means that you are this, or Brahma, Satyam, or what is it called? Everything is Brahman, that's their idea. Brahmavadis are some of them are extremely renounced and intelligent personalities, but they cannot accommodate that God can be a person at the same time, have so much energy, power, So they are, they are transcendentalists, that's a fact. But they are considering everything as impersonal. It's just like, for example, they say that everything is Brahman. Everything is Brahman. This material world is Brahman. The spiritual world is Brahman. All the living entities are Brahman. Everything is Brahman, right? So that makes them kind of like, equiposed and spiritually enlightened. However, they do not see that behind this Brahman is the Param Brahman, which means the Supreme Brahman, who is, as we read in these verses today in this very interesting 10th chapter of the second canto, that he, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is behind this Brahman energy. He is the one who controls it.
Yes, my Prabhu. So we often say that Brahman realization means impersonal realization of the Lord. Is that right?
Yes.
So there comes the word impersonalist, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So the Mayavadis, they are not impersonalists.
No, they're demons. Because they say that Krishna is Maya. That's why they're demons. That his activities here in the material world are under the influence of material energy. That in other words, that his energy is more powerful than he is. So they're demons.
So it would be wrong to say that Mayavadi means impersonalist.
It's wrong, yes, definitely.
We often use that term.
Yeah. That's a confusion. That's a confusion. You should be very careful.
Yes.
Mayavadis and impersonalists, they're completely different and opposite personalities. Mayavadis are just demons who are envious of the Supreme Lord, impersonalists or transcendentalists who are attached to the impersonal aspect of the Lord, and thus but once they become, once they are in the proper association and agyata sukriti, that they have some value, then they become personalists. You have so many examples. For example, the four Kumaras, there are many others. You should read in Chaitanya Charitamrita the Atmarama verse, and also how Lord Chaitanya explained the Atmarama verse first to Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya, and then also, of course, to Sanatan Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. There you'll find how so many Atmaramas or self-satisfied persons became attached to Krishna when being in his company or devotees.
Okay, last point, or last question. So the teachings of Sankaracharya, is that considered Mayavadi teachings or just in best? Because quite often we associate Sankaracharya with Mayavadi philosophy.
No. Shankaracharya, he was teaching impersonalism on the basis of the Vedas, and Buddha was teaching impersonalism on the basis of rejecting the Vedas. But both were impersonalists, whereas the demons, they have taken advantage of the teachings of Shankaracharya to develop their deviant and envious philosophy, right? It's not Shankaracharya himself. He's an incarnation of Lord Shiva, who is the greatest Vaishnava. Vaishnavanam Tata Shambhu, you know. So he didn't introduce any Mayavad. He introduced impersonalism just on the basis of the Vedas, so that he could overturn the Buddhist ideology or philosophy which was prevalent in India and which rejected the Vedas. So he, on the basis of the Vedas, he proved that Buddhism is okay, but we have it in the Vedas, so we don't need your Buddhism. That's why Buddhism slowly but surely vacated India and went to China and to Japan and to Tibet and Southeast Asia. Yeah, in India, it is not so much Buddhism due to Shankaracharya's teachings, and then later on, the greatest of all the philosophers who introduced the Achinta Veda Veda Tattva, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He overturned even Shankara's impersonalism, and so the followers of Prakashananda Saraswati in Varanasi, they were all followers of Shankaracharya, but in Lord Chaitanya's presence, they all became Vaishnavas, devotees, personalists. Okay. Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya also, by the way.
Okay, thank you very much. Only that most often, except for your clarification today, most of our devotees consider Mayavadis to be impersonalists. And
that's a misunderstanding.
Yes, it's a very common mistake most of us do. So it's a very nice question and very nice explanation given, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So the what do you call it? The Advaita Vedantists. So they are Mayavads. They are not impersonalists.
Who said?
Because they were converted by Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya, I think, if I'm not mistaken, considered them Mayavads, which means they were atheistic by definition of their philosophy.
No. Lord Chaitanya didn't convert Mayavadis. Lord Chaitanya converted impersonalists who are Advaitavadis, which means the one and undifferent. Yeah. So Advaitadvad and Advaita, the Advaitavadis are not Mayavadis. They are just impersonalists. Impersonalists are those who think that Brahma is everything. Everything is just Brahman. You know, that everything is Brahman, but they are not offensive toward Lord Krishna. Those who are offending Krishna, Lord Chaitanya said, avoid them by all means. He wouldn't even go to associate with them. If he would see and Lord Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he was extremely ferocious towards Mayavadis. Bhakti Vinod Thakur also. So Mayavadis, they're like snakes, or Prabhupada said, just like, snakes with jewels on their head, also scientists, Prabhupada said. But just consider this, that You have nowadays so many yogis, so many teachers in India who have thousands and thousands of, hundreds of thousands of disciples. In Africa, you have so many Mayavadis, you can't believe it, who are just offenders to Lord Krishna and to the devotees. If you get to the really to the root of their personality, they're envious snakes. They hate Krishna, they hate Krishna. Impersonalists are attached to impersonal aspect of Lord, which is transcendence, but they're not hating Krishna. Lord Chaitanya wouldn't associate with Mayavadis. Believe it. He was immediately run away from Mayavadis. Of course, in those days, there were also Mayavadis, no doubt, but Lord Chaitanya would never go to preach to them and never approach them. He would avoid them. He said, if you hear the Mayavada philosophy, you will fall down immediately. Lord Chaitanya said so. So we should avoid Mayavadis, but impersonalists, we should understand they're attached to the impersonal aspect of the Lord. They're not envious. As soon as you say Krishna, the Mayavadi jumps and starts offending Krishna, right? Whereas as soon as you say Krishna to an impersonalist, the impersonalist, yes, but the Brahman is more important than Krishna, isn't it? He's not kind of like, offensive. As soon as one offends Krishna, and the Vaishnavas reject him immediately, he's a Mayavadi. They're demons, There's so many, look at your Africa, In Africa, you will find so many voodoo guys, They're all demons, They just simply hate Krishna. They would kill Krishna immediately if they could, They would curse Krishna. They would curse the devotees. They're demons. They're Mayavadis, And they think God is Maya. Basically, horrible people, We should avoid them by all means.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji. Since Lord Chaitanya is said and understood to be the most beneficent incarnation of the Lord, and he came to relieve the burden of all living entities in the world, how then does he despise the Mayavads and not wanting to help them? They are the very people that need help. So I was thinking that maybe Lord Chaitanya might have said that, well, you may try to help these people, but to be extra careful. But totally abandoning them, then how are they going to be saved?
Give them prasadam. Let them hear Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Don't preach, just chant Hare Krishna, take prasadam. And that's all, but avoid to discuss with them, avoid to listen to them. As soon as they offend Krishna, just run away, Vishnu, Vishnu. But Lord Chaitanya was so munificent that through the Harinam Sankirtan and through the prasadam, maybe their hearts will change, maybe not in this life, maybe in the next life, and they make some sukriti, which means pious activities. Get the Mayavadis. Sometimes I mean Mayavadis also, and I tell them, just give a donation, we're doing good things, we're helping poor people. Yeah. And the Mayavadis sort of like sometimes they're sort of like they feel very intelligent, and they'll tell you, okay, so I'll give you a little donation. I'm so full. Yeah. So we should engage them in works of devotion, but not listening to them, not associating with them. It's very dangerous. Lord Chaitanya said that Mayavadis, to associate with Mayavadis is extremely dangerous, like drinking poison.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
They're not so many Mayavadis, to be honest. There are not so many Mayavadis.
Okay. Yeah, Prabhu, please go ahead.
Yes, because we just said now that a lot of devotees make mistake, but it's also based on what we read in the books. We are repeating. So I would like to know, what is the teaching of the Mayavadis? Can we say this is what they teach? Because excuse me, Prabhu, most often when we try to explain what the Mayavadi teach, we say they're teaching impersonalism. So please tell us what the Mayavadis teach, and let us have an example of what is the teachings of the Mayavadis.
Yeah, the teaching of the Mayavadis is that when God comes into this material world, he accepts a material body, and he is under the influence and under the control of material energy. Yeah, that's the Mayavadi.
Also,
No, 1 minute. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
The impersonalists also say that originally God has no form. And when it comes into this world, then when God takes form, that is the energy, the Maya energy, that everything takes form, but originally God has no form. So when it takes form, it's just for his lila, and all of us also, we are under the illusion now, but at one point we will become, realize, and we will know our original, nature has been formless, Brahman. So this is what also the impersonalists say. What is the difference?
The difference is that the Mayavadis are envious of God. Yeah, the impersonalists, they may say that God is ultimately impersonal, and then when he comes into this world, he accepts a material form. They may say like this, the impersonalists, but they're not envious of that form. Whereas the Mayavadis, they're envious, they hate it, they would like to kill it. They would like to kill Krishna. They are envious of Krishna. That's the whole difference. The Mayavadi is an envious person. An impersonalist by nature, he is not envious. He may be, I would say, attached to the impersonal and say, okay, just like, I give you the best example of an impersonalist, Shankaracharya, Sarvabhaum Bhattacharya. Just read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the chapter when he meets Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as an impersonalist, as a follower of Shankaracharya. He was Bhattacharya, which means he was the most learned person in Jagannath Puri in those days. And just read his explanation or his attitude towards Lord Chaitanya, that he wasn't envious of Lord Chaitanya. To the contrary, Prakashananda Saraswati either. They weren't envious.
Yeah, that's good example. Can you give us an example of a Mayavadi from the scripture?
I think that there is in this in Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, we do not see any Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu being approached or approaching Mayavadis. As far as I'm concerned, there were no, like in our scriptures, we do not have precisely people who are like Mayavadis. There, maybe you will find, if you look through the books, that you will find some examples of Mayavadis. But nowadays you have so many Mayavadis,
Now, how come Srila Prabhupada in all his books talk a lot about Mayavadis, but then there are no examples of such at this time or at the time of Lord Chaitanya? There are no one example that we can mention.
Well, I mean, honestly speaking, the Vaishnavas, they neglect the Mayavadis, but naturally there are many Mayavadis who, under the guise of yoga, under the guise of so-called spiritualist realization, etc., etc., they do not openly designate themselves as Mayavadis, but they are Mayavadis. And we avoid them like the pest. We just avoid them, that's all. Because they're envious. As soon as you find someone envious, that's a Mayavadi. It's simple as that. And you will find definitely, if you read through the Bhagavatam, mainly if you read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will find examples of Mayavadis. Just look up the index and you will find maybe one or two Mayavadis. But how can you find Mayavadis in our scriptures? Because our scriptures are transcendentally, pure transcendental literature. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We're not concerned with Mayavadis, and we neglect them, and we avoid them mainly. Because they're envious. If you meet an envious person, you can be sure that he's a Mayavadi.
Well, Hare Krishna, thank you. Srimad Prabhu, I believe this question you asked, even though Prabhuji has dealt with it in a very wonderful, nice way, but we still have a very long way to go, because there are lots of references from Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada himself, wherein he states that those who consider God to be impersonal are Mayavadis.
No, Prabhupada says those who consider God controlled by Maya, they're Mayavadis. That's a definition. If you think that God is controlled by illusion, by the material energy, then you're Mayavadi. If you think that God himself, when he descends into this material world, he is controlled by illusion, that he is lusty like we are lusty, that he is envious like we are envious, that means that you think that the material energy Maya is controlling that personality of Godhead. They are not impersonalists, they're Mayavadis. Whereas the impersonalists, they are not aware, maybe because they're attached, that's the word, they're attached to the impersonal aspect of God. That's all. They're simply attached to that aspect, and they're reluctant to become attracted. But they do become attracted, and they actually become personalists. There's an example: Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and others. Prakashananda Saraswati.
Well, I think this is the interchangeability of the words Mayavadi and impersonalism. Because if I may share this, I just went to Vanikut, and this is what Srila Prabhupada is saying. Those who do not accept the personality of Godhead, they are called Mayavadis. Mayavadi means they see everything Maya. Even Krishna is Maya. That is called Mayavadi.
That's it.
Now, if we go here, Srila Prabhupada says that therefore, impersonalists are called Mayavadi. Mayavadi means all their philosophy is also Maya. It has no meaning. So here, Srila Prabhupada is also implying that impersonalists are also Mayavadis because the impersonalists are killing Krishna. Srila Prabhupada gives this example. If I say you do not have a head, you do not have a hand, you do not have feet, you do not have this, it means you are not existent, it means you're dead. So if the impersonalists say that God has no form, does not have this, does not have that, it means they've killed Krishna, and so they become Mayavadis. So, I understand the explanation you're giving that the difference is envious. They think that the Supreme Lord is not different from the material energy. The impersonalists usually see beyond that. But I think in terms of word conjectures, Srila Prabhupada himself sometimes refers to the impersonalists as Mayavadis, like we read in here. And I think I'm thinking Srila Prabhupada is saying that because they are nullifying the personal form of the Lord, and therefore they're killing Krishna.
Yeah,
Krishna cannot be killed.
for sure. No. Definitely there is a close relationship between Mayavad and impersonalism, no doubt. And the Srila Prabhupada calls sometimes and many times in his lectures, etc., that he assimilates the impersonalists with the Mayavadis. But the terminus technicus, the technical meaning of the word impersonalist or transcendentalist, as was at the start of this discussion, we were discussing that Krishna describes transcendentalists either as impersonalists or personalists. Yeah. So that's where we started. That was the start of the discussions, And we cannot contradict Krishna. If Krishna says that they are also transcendentalists, then we should accept it, And the fact of the matter is that many times, and that is an undoubtable fact, many times these impersonalists at heart they're envious of Krishna, and therefore they're Mayavadis. So we can also say that some, not all, impersonalists are Mayavadis and demons. And no doubt there are more demons, Mayavadis. There are more impersonalists who are demons than impersonalists who are like Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Prakashananda Saraswati. So many envious people. We have here in the Czech Republic, we have one Mayavadi who presents himself as a follower of Sri Sampradaya. He's so-called a guru, and he teaches Bhakti Marga, and he's a total demon. He's a homosexual, and he presents himself as a transcendentalist, but he's a total impersonalist and a demon, And some of these demons nowadays, they even have murtis of Krishna, but and they sort of like, they even chant japa, so-called, but at heart they're envious of Krishna, and we should avoid their company by all means.
Well, thank you so much. Madhavan, probably you have something else to share, please.
Just a little comment.
Okay.
Some people deny the existence of God. They say there's no God. And when you die, nothing happens again. So this concept of God, this concept of religion, they see it as, let's say, Maya. So the way classify them as Mayavadi also.
Well, if they hate God, then they're Mayavadi, no doubt. They're demons, It's when you go on Sankirtan, for example, today I went distributing Bhagavad Gita, and I met one man who is like he said, "Oh, I'm not interested. I'm interested in only this thing. I just want to see this thing, and don't even talk to me. There is the door." He threw me out. Basically, he said, "I don't want to even speak with you." Right? So naturally, he's attached to being a demon. So what can I do? I said, "Have a nice day." And that's all. What we don't become angry with them. We just become tolerant. But then I went to another man, another person, and she was a shopkeeper. She was so nice. She immediately said, "Oh, this is very interesting. I already have a Bhagavad Gita from my father, but this is a nicer one. I'll buy this one immediately." Yeah. So we just have to find the people. So Prabhupada once said, and that's a fact. He said, "The world is full of demons, and we are trying to make divines." Because the world is full of demons. You just look at television, you just see demons there. Look at some film, they're shooting each other, they're cutting their throats, they're raping women and things like that. They see it on television. The people, they become influenced by this. For example, yesterday I heard there was this lady who was very very famous singer, and she had a big concert in America, in Rio de Janeiro. It was a concert. What's her name? Madonna, she's called. And the 1.5 million demons came to see her. There's 1.5 million demons who would go. I would never go to see a concert of this Rakshasi, who calls herself Madonna, and Madonna means, the mother of God, She's not at all saintly. To the contrary, she's just sensual, and she evokes, I would say, lust and envy and everything. You see some concerts here, they have 1.5 million people attending, and they're all demons. There's absolutely no doubt about it, because they like this kind of, excitement, drinking, drugs, sex.
Yeah.
What can you do? That's the way it is.
Thank you very
Well,
much,
thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Actually, when you were talking about in Russia during the time, the scientists like Professor Kotovsky, whom Srila Prabhupada met, philosophy and science. Srila Prabhupada was saying, if you do not know, then why are you teaching? So Srila Prabhupada actually put this up here. Srila Prabhupada says that if you know, then you teach. You have TEACH.
Yeah.
If you do not know, then you flip the letters around, and then it means you're cheating, which is very interesting.
I did a song many years ago. I sang a song, I recorded it even, and I sang that teachers are cheaters and gods are dogs.
Yeah.
And cows are only teachers, and something like that. But they were feeding cows with meat, meat powder. So cows are in our world, we are in this situation. The teachers are cheaters and dogs are gods. And you can see people walking with their dogs. The dogs are their gods, you know what I mean? And you know how much money they pay for taking care of their dogs? It's amazing, you know. They worship their dogs. They pick up the stool from the dogs, etc., etc., you know. For them, many of the people, they consider their dogs as their gods, you know. So dog, God, also this flip around the word and you have God, dog, you know.
Well, thank you so much, Prabhuji. I think we may bring the class to a close. It's been about 2 hours. Prabhuji, we thank you so much for your love and your wisdom and your patience.
Thank you.
Being with us all these days and months. And we hope to have your association more and more in the near future. But dear devotees, before we leave today, yesterday was a very heavy day for us all as Vaishnav devotees in ISKCON, because yesterday we had 3 of our sannyasis and gurus experience some sort of cardiac attacks, like heart attacks. And somehow one of them left us. His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj, as you all may know, left us yesterday. For us as devotees, we are glad that Maharaj is gone back home, but at the same time, it is very, very difficult to lose such a special soul who's been helping us in our spiritual life, both physically and spiritually. Of course, he will consider to help us spiritually, but it might be limited to those who can extend themselves spiritually. So we're going to humbly request all the devotees, we all join together, and then we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation to Maharaj for all his love, his devotion, his dedication, and kindness that he's shared with us all for all these years. And I was fortunate enough to have met Maharaj a couple times in Canada, Toronto, and he's just so cheerful, so charming, and he fearlessly and forcefully defended Srila Prabhupada and his teachings in all circumstances, even when his body appeared to be weakening, but his spirit was so strong that he always fought, not just blind fight, but as a matter of truth and facts to represent Srila Prabhupada. So we're going to humbly request all the devotees that we all unmute and we chant. So we're going to chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra twice, one for Maharaj and one for our revered speaker and Krishna, allowing us to get together and hear in Srimad Bhagavatam. So may we all unmute and we all chant Jai. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Pancha Kalpa Taribhyascha Kripa Sindhyavacham Yanam All glories to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj Ki. All glories to our revered speaker Jaya Gurudev Prabhu Ki. All glories to assembled Vaishnavi devotees. Hare. So, devotees, we thank you all for being here. And as always, tomorrow, by Guru Krishna's grace, we're also going to have another wonderful speaker. Let me see here. Okay.